My name is Sarah Mitchell, and before you imagine anything impressive, let me tell you exactly how I looked the day this all started. I was standing in my mom's driveway, wearing faded gray jeans, a hoodie that had seen too many late nights in server rooms, and sneakers that probably should have been retired 2 assignments ago. If you had driven by, you wouldn't have seen a seasoned officer on leave. You would have seen someone who looked like she was coming home to escape, not someone coming back from serving. I had just wrapped up a 9-month Dark Ops deployment with U.S. Cyber Command and was taking the first real breather I'd had in years. My mom had recently moved in with her new husband, Douglas Tate, and she asked if I could stay for a few weeks to help her settle into the new place. I told myself it would be simple. A few home-cooked meals, light errands, quiet days catching up on reading. I was wrong. Douglas met me at the front door with a handshake stiff enough to qualify as a warning. He was the type of man who looked like he never quite left the military, even though he'd been out for over a decade. Buzz cut, pressed polo shirt tucked too tightly into khakis, that posture like he was still standing at parade rest, and eyes that scanned you like he was filing you away in a folder marked "Needs Improvement." From the second he saw me, I knew exactly which folder I went into. To him, I was just another adult daughter drifting home with a laptop and no direction. I saw it in the way his gaze slid over my oversized hoodie with disdain. No questions, no curiosity, just assumptions. He saw a phone, a messy bun, and a woman who clearly, in his mind, had never learned structure. What he didn't see was the CAC, Common Access Card, with the gold chip zipped inside my pack. He didn't see the encrypted satellite phone on silent in my pocket, still pulsing with classified briefings from the Pentagon. He didn't see the woman who, 48 hours ago, had orchestrated a digital blockade that prevented a power grid collapse in Eastern Europe. But that's the thing about men like Douglas. They don't look past what they expect to see. I wasn't offended. Not exactly. I've spent enough time around egos in uniform to know how the game is played. What caught me off guard was how quickly the labels landed. One glance, and I went from returning daughter to tolerated inconvenience. My mom tried to smooth things over, saying he was just adjusting to the idea of family again. I nodded. I was good at nodding. Silence is a weapon I mastered a long time ago. The thing is, I could have corrected him right there on the porch. I could have rattled off rank, station, and commendations. I could have told him that while he was managing a hardware store, I was managing global threat levels. But I didn't. Not because I was hiding anything, but because I've learned that real strength doesn't announce itself in every room it enters. Loud people are usually the ones with the least to say. Sometimes it's more powerful to let people underestimate you. It gives you the tactical advantage. And Douglas? He took that invitation and ran with it. By the end of that first day, he had already made 2 jokes about millennials and screen time. At dinner, he asked me if I had considered going back to school to get on a clearer path. "You know, Sarah," he said, pointing his fork at me. "The community college has a decent nursing assistant program. It's honest work. Gives you some discipline." My mom winced. I smiled. I told him I'd think about it. What I didn't tell him was that 12 hours earlier, I had been on a secure video line with the Joint Chiefs of Staff. I didn't mention that I was the youngest Rear Admiral, lower half, in the history of the Cyber Corps, promoted specifically for my work in dismantling state-sponsored terror cells. But sure, maybe a nursing assistant class would help me learn discipline. That night, as I unpacked in the guest room, I placed my uniform bag gently in the back of the closet and shut the door. It was the heavy white garment bag of a flag officer. Inside was the dress white uniform, the gold shoulder boards with the single silver star, and the ribbons that detailed a career spent in the shadows. It was the only part of me that felt too big for this house. I didn't plan on putting it on, not unless I had to. And at the time, I honestly thought I wouldn't have to. By day 3, the house had stopped feeling like a home and started feeling more like a boot camp run by a man who had never actually seen combat. Douglas ran the place like a command post, complete with daily expectations taped to the fridge and a self-appointed title of household commander. He wasn't subtle about it either. Rules were laid down like policy. Phones off at dinner, lights out by 10, towels folded exactly 3 ways or face another lecture on attention to detail. The way he moved through the house reminded me of a bad drill sergeant from a movie, always inspecting, always correcting, except this wasn't a base, and none of us had signed up for this. I could handle structure. I'd lived under stricter orders, in tighter quarters, in far more dangerous places. But the difference was that those rules had a reason. They kept people alive. Here, the rules were just about Douglas's ego. Douglas liked to hear himself talk about structure. He tossed around phrases like operational readiness and chain of command, as if dinner cleanup required a tactical briefing. I once made the mistake of leaving a coffee mug in the sink. The next morning, I woke up to a sticky note on my door that read, "Lack of discipline leads to mission failure." He thought it was a leadership lesson. I thought it was hilarious. My phone, which never really left my side, was his primary target. I kept it on silent. But Douglas still noticed every vibration, every glance, every moment I checked in with my team back at Fort Meade. He called it a distraction, said I was addicted to social media. "You're glued to that thing," he scoffed one morning while I was reading a raw intelligence report on a developing situation in the South China Sea. "Life is happening right here, Sarah. Look up once in a while." Once, he actually reached out to take it off the kitchen counter like he was confiscating contraband from a teenager. I moved my hand, fast. Before he could touch the device, my hand was over it, blocking him. It was a reflex. He blinked, startled by the speed. "Sensitive data," I said simply. He laughed. "What? Your high score on Candy Crush?" I didn't explain. I didn't owe him that. And honestly, I doubted he would have understood the concept of level 5 encryption if I drew him a diagram. He made these little comments constantly. Snide remarks about how I slept in until zo700, even though I had been up since 0300 coordinating a patch for a DoD server breach. Comments about how my generation didn't know what hard work was. All while, he sat at the kitchen table reading Tom Clancy novels, acting like he was the protagonist. Every story he told came with a lesson. He loved to talk about his time in the National Guard back in the 90s. To hear him tell it, he single-handedly held the line against chaos. "In the real military," Douglas would say, puffing out his chest, "we didn't have safe spaces. We had orders. You wouldn't last a day in my old unit, Sarah." The irony was suffocating. I nodded and drank my coffee. What made it worse was how my mother watched all of it unfold. She hovered near the stove or busied herself with laundry, always listening, always watching, but never stepping in. Her eyes would flick to mine sometimes across the dinner table, full of quiet apology. She had lived too many years smoothing over someone else's rough edges. She wanted peace. She wanted this marriage to work. I knew she wasn't going to push back. So I didn't either. I folded into myself instead. I kept my rank out of the conversation. I kept my mouth shut. I became the ghost he wanted me to be. When Grandpa Louis arrived for the weekend, the air in the house changed. Louis was my mom's father, a Vietnam vet, Marine Corps recon, the real deal. He walked with a limp and didn't say much, But when he looked at you, you felt measured. He didn't speak much that first day, but you could feel his presence like an old coat pulled snug around your shoulders. Warm. Heavy with stories. Over breakfast, he barely said a word. But I caught him watching me as I sat near the corner of the table. He noticed things Douglas missed. He noticed that I always sat facing the door. He noticed that when a car backfired outside, I didn't jump. I assessed. He noticed the callus on my finger from years of typing code and handling weapons. Later that day, we went out for a walk in the garden, just the two of us. "He's a loud one, isn't he?" Grandpa Louis said, gesturing back toward the house where Douglas was shouting at the TV. "He likes control," I said diplomatically. Grandpa Louis stopped. He leaned on his cane and looked at me. His eyes dropped to the specialized watch on my wrist, a Garmin tactics used by special operators. Then he looked at my eyes. "You're carrying something heavy, Sarah," he said softly. I paused. "Just work, Grandpa." He chuckled, a dry, rasping sound. "I know a 1,000-yard stare when I see one, and I know what work means when you don't talk about it." He tapped his cane on the ground. "You outrank him, don't you?" I looked at him. I didn't deny it. A small smile tugged at the corner of my mouth. "Considerably," I whispered. Grandpa Louis laughed, a real belly laugh. He patted my shoulder. "Give him enough rope," he said. "He'll hang himself eventually." It was the first time since I came home that I didn't feel alone. The breaking point came on Saturday. Douglas had decided to host a formal dinner party for his friends from the local Rotary Club and some of his old service buddies. He wanted to show off the new house, the new wife, and apparently his command over his family. He stood in the kitchen, arms folded, listing off assignments like he was briefing a squad before a field operation. "Sarah," he barked, "I need you to handle the coats and drinks, make sure the ice buckets are full, and for God's sake, wear something respectful. No hoodies." He didn't ask, just pointed in my direction without even making eye contact, like I was a servant. "I have some work to finish," I said calmly, "but I'll be down by 1900. "Work?" Douglas scoffed. "You don't have a job, Sarah. You have a hobby. This dinner is important. These are important people. Try to act like you have some upbringing." I felt my jaw tighten. "I'll be there," I said. I went upstairs to my room. My phone was flashing red. I picked it up. It was a secure alert from the National Military Command Center, NMCC. Priority 1, immediate recall. Code, Black Knight. My heart rate spiked, but my hands remained steady. Black Knight meant a catastrophic breach of national infrastructure. The president was convening the emergency council. I unlocked the phone. A text message followed from my aide-de-camp. "Ma'am, the situation has escalated. The White House is requesting your presence for the mitigation strategy. We are 5 minutes out. Sending extraction team." I looked at the time. 18:55. I didn't have a choice. I couldn't just leave in jeans. If I were going to the White House or a secure bunker, I needed to be in uniform. I walked to the closet. I unzipped the heavy white bag. I pulled out the service dress whites. The fabric was crisp, immaculate. I put on the shirt. I fastened the shoulder boards. The single silver star of a rear admiral gleamed under the room light. I pinned on my ribbons. The Defense Superior Service Medal. The Legion of Merit. The Bronze Star with V device from my time attached to a SEAL team for cyber support. I looked in the mirror. Sarah, the daughter, was gone. Admiral Mitchell was back. I heard the sound of gravel crunching in the driveway, heavy tires, not one car, two. I looked out the window. 2 black government SUVs had pulled up onto the lawn. Blue and red lights flashed silently in the grill. 4 men in suits jumped out. Following them were 2 military police officers in full gear, armed. It was time. Downstairs, the dinner party was in full swing. Douglas was holding court in the living room, a scotch in his hand, telling a story about basic training for the 10th time. Discipline, Douglas was saying loudly. That's what this generation lacks. They crumble under pressure. My stepdaughter? Nice girl, but she's lost. No direction. Suddenly, the front door burst open. It wasn't a knock. It was a breach. The 2 MPs entered first, scanning the room with professional intensity. The Secret Service agents followed. The room went dead silent. Douglas dropped his glass. It shattered on the floor. "What the hell?" Douglas shouted, stepping forward, trying to sound brave but looking terrified. "Who are you? You can't just barge in here." One of the MPs stepped forward. "Secure the perimeter." Douglas turned pale. He looked at my mom. "Oh my God," Douglas whispered. "It's Sarah. She's in trouble. I knew it. She's on drugs, or she's AWOL. They're here to arrest her." My mom looked like she was about to faint. "Douglas, do something." I told her," Douglas stammered, backing away from the armed men. "I told her she needed to get her life together. Officer, whatever she did, I have nothing to do with it." The lead Secret Service agent ignored him. He looked at his watch. "Admiral on deck," the agent barked. Douglas froze. "What?" I stepped out of the shadows of the hallway. I wasn't wearing the hoodie. I was wearing the pristine white uniform of a United States Navy admiral. My cover was tucked under my arm. The stars on my collar caught the light. My face was set in the stone-cold expression of someone who commands fleets. I walked into the living room. My heels clicked on the hardwood floor with a rhythm that sounded like judgment. I stopped in the center of the room. The MPs snapped to attention. The Secret Service agent stood straight. Douglas stared at me. His eyes bulged. He looked at the stars on my shoulders. He looked at the rows of medals. He looked at the face of the stepdaughter he had called lazy 5 minutes ago. "Sarah?" he choked out. I didn't look at him. I looked at the lead agent. "Status?" I asked. My voice was low, commanding. "Ma'am," the agent said, "Air Force One is on standby at Andrews. The Secretary of Defense is on the secure line. They need your authorization code to initiate the counter-grid lock." "Understood," I said. I turned to Douglas. He was shaking. He looked small. He looked like a man who had just realized he had been shouting at a hurricane to keep it down. You're an admiral?" Douglas whispered. "But you were washing dishes." "I was washing dishes because I respect my mother's house," I said. I took a step toward him. He flinched. "You talk a lot about discipline, Douglas," I said. "You talk about the real military. You talk about respect." I let the silence hang. But real leaders don't belittle their troops. Real leaders don't need to tape rules to a fridge to feel powerful, and they certainly don't mistake silence for weakness. I glanced at the shattered glass on the floor. "Clean that up," I said. It wasn't a request. It was an order. Douglas nodded dumbly. Yes, ma'am." I turned to my mother. She was crying, but she was smiling. She looked at me with awe. "Mom," I said, softening my voice, "I have to go. The president is waiting. I might be gone for a few days." "Go," she whispered. "Go save the world, honey." I put my cover on my head. I adjusted the brim. "Agent," I said, "let's move." "Yes, Admiral." I turned and walked out the door. The MPs fell in behind me. I walked out into the cool night air. The lights of the SUVs painted the driveway in red and blue. As I climbed into the back of the armored vehicle, I saw Douglas standing in the window, watching me. He looked like a ghost, a man whose entire worldview had just been shattered by a woman in a white uniform. The agent handed me a secure phone. "Madam Admiral, the President is on the line." I took the phone. "This is Admiral Mitchell," I said. "I'm secure. Proceed with the briefing." The convoy sped away, leaving the quiet suburban street behind. I didn't look back. I didn't need to. Douglas would never tape a note to my door again. He would never ask me if I had direction again. He had learned the hardest lesson of all. The quietest person in the room is usually the one you should be most afraid of. And sometimes the person folding your towels is the same person keeping your world from burning down. I settled back into the seat. The mission was waiting. Admiral Mitchell was reporting for duty.